I'm Anthony Snow, producer and director of After the Final Bell. In this series, we examine boxing professionals' lives after their final bell. We're here today at the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, located in the Boulevard Mall in Las Vegas, Nevada. Our man doing interviews inside the ring is T.C. Martin of the T.C. Martin Show, longtime sports broadcaster. And keeping it real, our man on the street doing one-on-one interviews is former three-time world champion Tony the Tiger Lopez. I hope you enjoy the show.
In the sport of boxing, two combatants square off against one another with violent intentions. Their mission is to inflict as much pain and damage to their opponent as possible. In the end, one leaves with their hand raised. The person who raises their hand at the end is also an integral part of this ordeal. Today I'm joined by two of the finest referees in the boxing business. One is a Hall of Famer, the other soon to be. Over the last 40 years, these two gentlemen have officiated some of the biggest fights in boxing history. Joe Cortez refereed over 170 world title fights, including the legendary matches between Oscar De La Hoya and Julio Cesar Chavez, Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe, and the fight that saw 45-year-old George Foreman become the oldest heavyweight champion of the world. His contemporary is the man who currently gets the call for most of the biggest fights and is considered the best referee right now. He's been in the middle of the ring with Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, Roy Jones Jr., Bernard Hopkins, and so many more. He has over 100 championship bouts to his credit. He's Kenny Bayless. Gentlemen, welcome. It's great to share the ring with you. Two of my closest friends in the business. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Joe, let's start with you. Most people don't realize that you actually were a boxer first. You were a featherweight, won a couple Golden Gloves championships, and then also had a great pro career too. You were 10-1. Talk a little bit about that growing up with boxing, and how did you go with that career transition into a referee?
Well, it all started with Gaspar Ortega, who got me into boxing when I was 12 years old when I first met him. I started with boxing with the Police Athletic League as a fighter. Then I went to the Boys Club, and I did 8 years in the pros. And I wasn't getting many fights as a bantamweight. Then I decided to retire from boxing. As I retired from boxing, I was addicted to the sport. So I wanted to do something, either a trainer, manager, or something. So I decided to go as a referee. As a referee, I worked my way through the amateur ranks. 5 years into the pros, I decided then I got to do something with boxing. I wanted to get with my first world title fight. I got to do Aaron Pryor, Miguel Montilla. That was my first world title fight, and the rest is history.
Kenny, you took a little bit different path. I remember you being a school teacher, actually physical education instructor.
Yes.
How did you become a referee, and then when did you decide to give up teaching full time?
Well, when I moved here from the Bay Area, teaching was the reason why I came to Las Vegas. But growing up, I used to watch Muhammad Ali fight on ABC Wide World of Sports. So that's where I got my interest in boxing. And then it wasn't until I moved to Las Vegas that I actually saw Muhammad Ali fight a guy by the name of Joe Buckner at the convention center. So when that happened, the roof blew off. I mean, I knew that I wanted to get involved in the sports. So along the way, from just working my way into fights and wanting to get more involved, I decided to get into the amateur program like Joe, but not as a referee. I wanted to start out as a judge, which I did for several years. And then one day a friend of mine said to me, hey, you look like you stay in pretty good shape. Why don't you try refereeing? And my first response was no, I don't want to get in the ring. I'd rather stay outside of the ring. But then I thought about it, and Richard Steele had just recently moved to Las Vegas, and I asked Richard, well, could you show me the ropes of being a referee? And he took me down to the gym, and I got started, and like Joe said, the rest is history.
Who was instrumental in your career? You mentioned Richard Steele for you. What about you, Joe?
It was Gaspar Ortega who got me he was a fighter, but then it was Pat Mashia who became my mentor as a referee. Then I also had Zach Clayton, who refereed Ali with George Foreman, the Rumble in the Jungle. He was one of the great referees. Zach Clayton was a Hollywood Globetrotter, and always told me, Joe, when you're in that ring, I want you to move around that ring like a cat in the ring, He said, like I do with basketball. And then he was one of the outstanding referees back in the 70s, and I was watching him a lot. He would school me. He gave me a lot of pointers as a referee, and that's how I got to learn to be a better referee. Watch Arthur McCanty, Tony Perry, Zach Clayton, some of the best referees out there.
I remember, especially when you first started, Kenny, of going like to the top-ranked gym and seeing you train and be in the ring by yourself. It was very similar to what a boxer does when he shadow boxes. Talk a little bit about what the regimen is for a referee.
Well, back then I called it shadow refereeing, and I would go to the gym, and the key thing for me was knowing, well, we have to know where we are in the ring at all times, because it's important for us not to be in the way of where the judges are sitting. So I would get in the ring and I'd just move around and just kind of spot where the judges would be sitting, know where the blue corner, the red corner, as opposed to the neutral corner, and I just made it a point to work on those kind of things to perfect my abilities, so that when the fight took place, I didn't have to be conscious of where this stuff was. I already knew where it was, so it really worked in my favor as I continued to progress as a referee.
You know, this is a very dangerous sport, and you guys are tagged with a very big responsibility, and we've seen several deaths recently in the ring. Talk a little bit about when you step in the middle of that ring, about what your responsibility is.
Well, as a referee, you know, we know that the most important thing of our duties is to watch out for the safety of the fighters, making sure the fighters don't take unnecessary punishment. Now, as a referee, we know that this is a very dangerous sport, and there have been some ring deaths throughout the years, and this is something that we don't want to see in boxing, because we want to see these fighters go home to their families safe and sound. But sometimes things do happen. It could be one punch can turn everything around. But we are taught by doctors what to look for, what signs to look for when we referee in a fight. We don't want a fight to go too long. We'd rather stop a fight a punch too soon than a punch too late. It all takes about a matter of just your ring mechanic, knowing your domain, knowing when you're going to stop a fight. When a fighter got knocked down, he's outclassed, you know already, you got to start selling your call by going into the corner between rounds, making sure he's all right, and tell him, if you keep taking this kind of punishment, I'm going to stop this fight. You tell the cornerman back in the dressing room, if you want to stop the fight, you're welcome to stop the fight. You know your fighter better than I do. But these are the kind of duties that we have to have as a referee, to use all these precautionary measures to make sure these fighters can go back home safe and sound.
Yeah, stopping a fight is a difficult thing for us, like Joe said. But for us referees, the safety of the fighter is first. You know, we attend, or for me, I attend maybe 3 or 4 seminars a year, and referee seminars. And in those seminars, the first thing we talk about is fighter safety, because, like Joe said, these guys. When the fight is over with, you know, they have a family just like we do. They have kids just like we do, and you know, we want them to go home safe so that they're ready and prepared for the next fight. So, yeah, it's something for us that's on our mind, that we have to, you know, be mindful of. But on the same note, you know, the fighters, they know what they have to do as far as where they're at, how they're feeling at the time, and like Joe said, the cornerman has to also play a part when they feel that their fighters had enough.
As we talked about in the opening, you guys, really over the last 40 years, I consider you guys the 2 most influential and visible referees in the history of the sport. Talk a little bit about some of the most memorable moments or matches in your career.
Well, as a referee, I can tell you that referee fights like Julio Cesar Chavez, with a crowd of 65,000 in the indoor arena when he fought Pernell Whitaker. That was a big crowd. But then the other big crowd, the largest crowd in boxing history, was when Chavez fought Greg Haugen at Stadium Azteca with 136,000 fans. That was a great fight, very memorable. And of course, referee Mike Tyson when he knocked out Larry Holmes, Riddick Bowe against Evander Holyfield, George Foreman knocking out Michael Mora. Just to name a few, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, so many of the great fighters of all times that I've been able to. The honor of refereeing it's been a great memories for me as a referee. But most importantly was always to try to make the right calls and making sure these fighters go home safe and sound.
When I was coming up through the ranks, I actually was an inspector with the Nevada Commission before I became a referee. And if I could just share a quick story, when Mike Tyson won the title at the Las Vegas Hilton, I was the inspector in his dressing room. And after Mike had got taped up with his hands and gloved up, Kevin Rooney picked up a pair of mitts and said to Mike, give me a 6.678. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And Mike Tyson was where the dressing rooms were behind the Las Vegas Hilton in these single wide trailers. And Mike Tyson started rocking back and forth and started hitting those mitts with 3 4-punch combinations, and that single wide trailer would sway. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, he's going to hit somebody with those things. I mean, he had such power. But back in that time, after I became a referee, I thirsted for a Mike Tyson fight because he was the most exciting thing that was happening at the time. And it never happened for me. But I was blessed. I was blessed for guys like Joe Cortez coming to Las Vegas. I mean, I had the best of both worlds with having great referees like Joe Cortez, Richard Steele, Mills Lanes, Davey Pearl, and I learned and studied from those guys. And then when it was my turn, Mayweather and Pacquiao and Miguel Cotto and Sugar Shane Mosley. I mean, I've just been blessed in this sport with some of the great fights that I've refereed over the years.
You mentioned Mills Lane, and we talk about catchphrases, which you both have. Was Mills Lane the first that said, let's get it on? And then I want to start with you, Joe. Then you coined your catchphrase that says, I'm fair, but I'm firm. Kenny has his, what you say, I must obey. Where did that come from? Was it kind of like Mills Lane, or how did you come up with this?
I was doing an interview like we're doing today, and I was watching a videotape after the show, and the question was, Joe, what does it take to be a good referee? I said, well, you got to be fair with the fighters, but by the same token, you got to be firm. You know, so you can take control. You know, you got to let them do their thing. So I took it together. I put it there, fair but firm. I think I'm gonna use that. I'm fair, but I'm firm. Let's touch them up, and it's stuck. And
do you remember the first fight you actually used that?
I don't remember the first fight, but I can tell you it was like towards the middle of my career.
Okay.
For me, when I became when I got appointed as a professional referee, my middle son kept saying to me, Dad, you got to get a catchphrase because, you know, my kids, I'd take them to fights and whatnots, and they'd hear Joe and they'd hear Mills, and I says, well, you know, that's not my thing. And my son kept saying, no, Dad, you got to get a catchphrase. I said, yeah, okay, then pick one for me then. So he came up with the catchphrase that I used. I had to alter it a little bit, but he came up with what I say, where he said, I say it, you obey it. And I says, well, that's kind of harsh. Let me clean that up a little bit, and I did, which is what it is now. What I say, you must obey, and that has stuck, and that's what I've stuck with for my career.
Because of the success that you guys have had, you've had some movie offerings. You both worked with Sylvester Stallone. So if there was a boxing movie, one of you guys have gotten the call. What was it like working with Sylvester Stallone?
Well, it was an honor. I was one of the fight refereeing one of the big championship fights, and Sylvester was sitting behind me with Sugar Ray Leonard. I got a tap on the shoulder. He says, I said, hey, how you doing, buddy? He said, hey, Joe, I'm doing a movie, and Rocky Balboa, and I want you to be the referee. It was just like that. He tapped me on the shoulder. I said, all right, so give me your number, Joe. I gave him the number. Next thing I got a call, you know, and I got the script. They mailed me a script, a big script for the whole movie. They gave me a line, and when I came into to start doing my taping with Antonio Tarver was the opponent, with Rocky Balboa, and then they gave me a script to do this and do that. I said, wait a minute, Sylvester. He said, Joe, you know, I want this to look authentic as possible, you know. So he said, I need people in the movie, people that want to look real. So I called Mark Reiner, the executive director, and I said, Mark, I need a listing, phone numbers of all the officials. I want to do Sylvester Stallone a favor. I want to do the casting for the real officials. So I called trainers, inspectors, doctors, commissioners, referees. I called Kenny. I called other referees at Tony Weeks, and there was a bunch of Robert Hoyle as a timekeeper. And I got everybody involved, but I told Sylvester, you know what, the script you guys gave me, It's not the way we do it in the real. Why don't you guys do your fight and let me do my thing? You know, they said, okay, let's make it look authentic. I said, you get fight wherever you're going to do it, and I know where to position myself. I can't go by what's on the script here. But you tell me more or less what you're going to do, and I know exactly where I'm going to be moving. And that's where I did it. And every time we did a shoot, we leaned over the ropes to look at the monitor, and I said, no, that didn't look real. So he said, let's do it again. Until I can prove, I said, okay, that one looks real. He said, okay, let's stick with it. He said, save that one. So we saved maybe 100 clips, and we threw away maybe 60 of them. You know, but that's the way it went. It took us 6 days to do a clip, but you know, he took my advice as a professional in the ring, and I took his advice of what they wanted.
Rocky Balboa, Play It to the Bone, I Spy.
I Spy with Eddie Murphy.
Did that.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and then Kenny with Creed 2.
Creed 2, but before Creed 2, it was Ray Donovan with Showtime.
That's right.
And it came to quite of a shock to me because the commission called me and they just put the referee's name or in a pool to see who would withdraw it, and luckily I got drawn. So they did just a single round, which was at the Rio Hotel, and the number of takes over and over and over is what woke my eyes up on how serious this business is.
Right, it is.
Because whenever we thought that we got a good shot, we would do it again and again, and the fight, believe it or not, was only a one-round fight, but we was there shooting for 4 or 5 hours. And then after that, then the Creed came. Stitch Duran was the guy that gave me a call and said, and I've always wanted to work. I mean, I knew Joe and a bunch of the guys that done it over the years, and I'm just blessed again. And I got the call, and it worked out well, and it was a lot of fun.
There's another interesting story. So we're all familiar with the clapper that we hear with 10 seconds left in a round.
Right.
Kenny Bayless invented the clapper. I'm going to give him full credit here. I want you to talk about that story.
What happened, we had a timekeeper by the name of Jane Broadfoot. And to my knowledge, she was maybe the first woman official in the sport. Well, after a fight that we had, I believe the fight was at the Riviera Hotel. Back then, when there was 10 seconds left in the round, the timekeeper would hit the mat, which would signal to us that there's 10 seconds. And after a fight, she said to me, gee whiz, I just hurt my hand hitting that mat all the time. And then that just kind of gave me an idea, what could they do as opposed to hitting the mat that they could do that would not be, so painful. So that's what gave me the idea and it was a simple idea. I just got 2 pieces of wood with a door hinge with arms on both ends, and I designed it, put it together, gave it to Mark Ratner, who was the executive director at the time, and Mark said, well, we'll give it a try and see. And shucks, they've been using it ever since.
You constructed that in your garage, didn't you?
In the garage, exactly.
Now, is there a patent on that? You got the legal use of that now? Is that the deal?
Well, I did make a few calls, and what slowed me down was when the patent guy said, now, can you sell about 1,000 of these things? And I said, well, I don't think it's going to do like that. He says, well, you're going to put that kind of money in to get the patent, so if you want to make your money out. So I just kind of threw caution to the wind on that. But, yeah, it's still.
This series is Life After the Bell. Joe was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2011, the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame in 2013. Talk about what Joe Cortez is doing now.
Well, I'm involved with I do a lot of social media work, and I'm involved with boxing, and we have the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. We finally have a home for the Nevada Hall of Fame, which we're at right now, which is Rich Murata was the founder of the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, and you got Michelle Corrales Lewis, who's the president of the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. And I called him up last month. I said, listen, I've been talking around different places. We're at the Heads Up Museum. It's a trick art museum. I said, I talked to some friends of mine that own the place here, Tim and Chad. I said, listen, I see you got a space in the back there, man. You got about 2,000 square feet. What are you going to do with that? I said, we don't know right now. We're thinking about what we're going to do there. I said, how about Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, where they're looking for a facility? I would appreciate if we could do something with them. But this is already the beginning of June. And he said, well, you know, Joe, we're going to be tied up because we're doing our anniversary, 1 year anniversary at the Heads Up Museum in the 22nd of June. I said, any possible way we can open up Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame the same date, do the ribbon cutting? They said, Joe, you kind of pushing it, you know? I mean, they gave me a space that they gave for Nevada. But you know what, Joe, you know, we believe in you and we like to do something to help out Nevada Hall of Fame. Then we're going to do it. And they built out the whole place for us. In 3 weeks, we opened up the Nevada Hall of Fame. And here we are. You know, it really turned out to be a very popular location. And folks around the world are trying to come in, and this is what we wanted.
Definitely, it's a beautiful site here, the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. When the biggest fights are announced, your name is at the top of the list. And we now come to expect to see you in the middle of the ring for these World Championship fights. What's next for Kenny Bayless when you do call it a career?
Well, I'm, again, following the footsteps of guys like Joe Cortez. Mills Lane had his Mills show and had a few other things when he retired.
So you're going to be a judge?
No,
That's what we're going to see.
No.
We're going to see.
No, I'm not gonna cross that bridge. But the bridge that I would like to cross is maybe get a few more acting spots. I'm a SAG member now, the Screen Actors Guild, and I'm actually launching my new website. Actually, today when I leave here, I got to go talk with some people, and I just, you know, am preparing, because when I do finally retire, I just want to have some fun things to do to keep me active and keep me busy, and so those are a couple of things. I do a little public speaking. Because I'm a retired school teacher, I go back and talk to the high schools and middle schools and talk to sports programs and men's groups, and do a lot of speaking at churches as well. So yeah, I just want to talk my faith and give back and do my thing. Yeah.
Is there a timetable for you when to call it a career?
I'm thinking maybe 5 more years. My work has been clean. I still love the sport. I still like putting that bow tie on and putting them boxing shoes on and climbing through those ropes. So as long as that fire is still there, like I said, 5 years, and then we'll decide then.
Guys, it's been fantastic catching up, sharing stories. Like I said, 2 of the best of all time, spanning the last 40 years. There's been major fights. You guys probably have been associated with it. You're great people. You're great friends. I appreciate your time here today.
I want to tell the folks out there, keep your guards up at all times, protect yourselves at all times, and remember, we're fair, but we're firm. Touch them up.
All right, Kenny, we're getting ready to hit the ring. Give it to us.
What I say, you must obey. Oh, must obey.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it very, very much.
Okay.
I'm Anthony Snow for After the Final Bell. Thanks for watching.